Mr. Kishore Singh, who is heading the publication department, also the curatorial part of the Delhi Art Gallery. And this exhibition, was supposed to come to an end on the 7th, because there are a whole lot of logistics involved when we are organizing something like that, like insurance and travel and permissions. But they very happily agreed to extend the dates and took care of all the logistics. Now this exhibition is coming to an end tomorrow. Every good thing has to come to an end. But they are so happy with the people of Chandigarh, and today also we are happy that at the end of the day we have some respectable number of people to attend to this part of the appreciation course. But initially, there have been hordes of people, a lot of people visiting from all over Punjab, people coming in bus loads, students, teachers, art lovers from Jalandhar, from Amritsar, from Chandigarh University and various parts and schools. And in fact, this gallery probably has never seen as many people visiting this kind of an exhibition ever before in the history of Chandigarh or maybe in the region. So we are quite thankful to the people who took interest, but more thankful to Kishoreji, who actually reposed his faith in the city and us in the Punjab Lalit Kala Academy. And we have responded, I think, well. Maybe more praise from your words, not my words. Thank you.
As part of the workshops that we're doing today, we were looking at this overall understanding of the art movements in the country, how collectors were formed, how artists changed, what the catalytic moments were in their process and practices. And the other two modules that we're looking at sharing with you in the morning half is one on careers in art and the other on actual mediums and materials, how you recognize what goes into the making of a work of art. When you look at a work of art, how do you understand what it is, etc., which of course Yamini will come back to after this. I'm going to begin by just asking you one question. The world of art we know is kind of amorphous. We don't really understand it. It's something people do, all this arty-sharty culture vulture wale log. Just to try and get from you, how many careers or how many job opportunities would you imagine the world of art throws up? Yeah, not many, but let's call, there's an artist, there's a painter, there's a sculptor, there's someone who sells that work, maybe someone who writes about it. Any others that we can think of?
The whole world of curators.
Absolutely.
They write about it, they research. I think what she talked of was research.
Absolutely. A huge amount of it, yeah. So, what I'm going to do is actually run you through the sheer universe of opportunities that exists in the world of art that we don't normally think about, because we kind of isolate this world. We put it aside. We don't really say it's something that some people do. It's all right to go and look at art sometimes or go to a museum sometimes, etc. But there are literally millions and millions of people employed directly or indirectly, and through process of learning, education, career opportunities that are that they're being trained for, or sometimes are training themselves for on the job. Just to run you through, the most simplistic is our knowledge of the world of art coming through galleries itself. What do galleries do? Galleries sell paintings, they sell sculpture, they represent artists. And there are two kinds of galleries. Galleries that work in the space where there are artists who are living, whose works are brought in on a commission. Exhibitions such as this one are curated and held. Works are sold. When the exhibition comes to an end, the works go back to the artist. The other space, and the kind of space that we in DAG operate in, is the secondary market space. The space where Works have been acquired pretty much like an auction house through secondary sales, either from the artist, etc., or from studios, or from friends, or from auction houses, etc. A collection is built up, and that's how the curating and exhibitions are put together and held. Diwan was telling you that there are about 75 people working at DAG. Typically, a gallery will have a small one, 3, 4, 5 people, a very large one, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. And this is pretty much the model around the world. DAG's current staff strength is about 130 people, and I will correct you, about 100 of those are currently in Delhi. We're in the process of growing much more, but then of course, that is something that happens because we operate in the secondary space, which allows us far more room to research, to archive, and to work more like an institution itself. So just some of the kind of activities that DAG does, its galleries, the kind of exhibitions it opens, the kind of art fairs it participates in, and the look and feel of how our exhibitions are put together. The reason why so many people are required is very obvious when you see even this exhibition here in Chandigarh. There's an entire team of people that has worked on it. There's a book on the actual India Modern exhibition that was put together. Researchers worked on it, photographers worked on it, curators put the whole, chose the works and selected them for the exhibition. There was somebody who's written each and every label. And I think sometimes, some of you are from the media, writing those labels, and we have a specification of writing in 85 words, for example. Putting your thoughts down on an artist and a work of art in 85 words is more difficult than writing 500 words, because you're actually summarizing an entire body of work, an artist's work, and that specific work, and leaving those thoughts with you as clues to take away from that painting on how to read the artist, how to read the work of art itself. So there's all those people who work as well as part of the team. What do galleries typically need? Someone to head the gallery, someone to coordinate with artists, writers, promoters, media people, all the kind of growing universe that you will see around a gallery, a sales team, because obviously you need to sell works, people in marketing to do promotional work, research, acquisitions. You have to acquire works, or you have to be in touch with artists, etc., and work with them. So even if you may not be acquiring, as in the case of a secondary gallery, you're negotiating with artists to bring them in so that they choose your gallery over other galleries. And of course, logistics, but then of course I have an entire section separately on logistics. Selling of art. Itself, a huge, huge world. How many of us actually walk into a gallery and say, oh, I like that very much, I'm going to buy it. What's the price? 18 lakhs, all right. Do I get a discount? 16 lakhs, I'm going to take it home. That would be a dream for all of us who work in art institutions. Doesn't happen like that. There's a lot of effort that goes into selling. People who are putting in that kind of money want to know that their money is being spent well. There's a whole range of other things that you can buy. You can buy diamonds, you can buy jewelry, you can buy property, you can buy clothes, you can go on a holiday. Some things will return values, others won't return values, etc. But these are all experiential things. Art is part of that experiential universe. But the reasons why you buy art are the reasons that the sales team puts across to you. So for them, it's very important to know about the artist. It's very important for them to know about the work of art they're selling. They have to understand, if I am to communicate to you why an artist is important or why that particular work is important, I must be very confident about it myself, which means I need to be curious, I need to study. I need to understand values, figures. I should be able to communicate with an artist. I should be able to tell an artist that a work by Sousa sold for X amount in these 2 or 3 or 4 auctions. This is a comparable work, therefore the value is set at such and such price. So there's a lot of study that goes into selling a work of art. So this is just an example of the way, for example, DAG operates. at the India Art Fair, where we were showing a work by Amrita Shergill. We actually created a separate room so people who could line up to see the work, and a lot of descriptions on the work of art were written on walls in the room. There was a timeline on the artist that was provided, etc. There was a film made on the work of art specifically, which had been where we had Vivan Sundaram, her nephew, talk about both Amrita Shergill and the work of art, etc. All extremely time-consuming, take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. So you're creating value when you're selling works of art. Other than the galleries themselves and the sales staff that they employ, there are art dealers, people who are kind of middlemen and operate in a gray area in a space because they're not aligned to a specific institution, but they know artists, they know galleries, etc. So they become the middlemen, very often just like brokers when we are buying properties. They are different in turn from advisors, because advisors are the trained people for whom knowledge of that property is essential. For the dealer, it's just broking a deal. So the kind of atmosphere that you require, the kind of knowledge, the kind of interaction, etc. There is definitely a sense when you walk into a gallery of being very privileged. And I think that is what sales teams extend to their clients. They make them feel very special. Viewing rooms are created. They are treated well. They're spoken well. Follow-ups happen. There's a sense of discretion. People do not always want other people to know that they're buying something at a certain value, at a certain price, etc. So discretion becomes an extremely important part of someone from a selling team. Careers in auction houses. Auction houses operate in the secondary space as well. Auction houses, as we know, deal with works that have already belonged to other people who are now putting them up for sale because they've got tired of looking at a work of art, or they want to reclaim a certain value, or they want to sell that and buy something else for themselves, or any of a myriad reasons somewhere. We've all heard of Sotheby's and Christie's, two of the oldest auction houses in the world, with a history over 250 years old. There's Bonhams, there's Phillips, there's lots of other cities, countries in the West have literally hundreds of auction houses. The largest of the auction houses, strangely enough, operates out of China. India has a much smaller and a shorter history in terms of auction house practices. We have Saffron Art and a sister concern, Story Limited, that operate both in the online and the offline, the live space. You have Asta Guru, you have Pandols, and you have a few others that are now beginning to join in, including very, very recently, an auction house called Princeps. Typically, what happens in an auction house? A live auction, where the auctioneer is present in front of you, the works are being shown to you as they're being auctioned, catalogs have been created, which means writers have been engaged, works have been written about, especially the ones with high value, in some detail, etc. Then you have online auctions, which is a model where you sit on your laptop or on your phone and you can place your bid, which requires huge amounts of technology backup support, and the backup that an auction house requires. Auctioneers, professionals to source art again, because where is the art going to come to for an auction house? Not everything that a client brings into an auction house may interest the auction house or its audience, its bidders very much. So people actually source good works of art. They know who owns great works of art. They're in touch with families, they're in touch with studios, etc., to make sure that acquisitions are happening. And acquisitions is a very skilled area to operate as well. Then you have the experts who will talk about the works of art, people who've done their courses in art history, people who will write about it, who will meet clients and talk about it. Shows are often taken for previews to other cities as well. And there again, you require these experts to come in and talk to clients. You need evaluators, people who will put a value. How I know in the earlier session somebody was talking to Yamini about values, for example. How do you place value on a work of art? How do you decide this is for 1,000 rupees and not 100 rupees? Not 1,000 rupees, but 1,000,000 rupees. There's an engagement, there's a process, there's a checking, and you have to bring in a certain amount of transparency into this for the potential bidder to even be convinced that that value is a justified value. Otherwise, you could go in and laugh and say 1,000,000 rupees for something like this. What for? So there have to be extremely solid reasons why you're going to put in that kind of money into a work of art. Analysts who are studying price points, etc., who help the evaluators in turn, gauging price points for a specific artist, for an artist in a certain period, painting in a certain medium. So works by an artist from the 60s may be much more expensive than works painted by the same artist in the 80s. Why would they be important, etc.? Was he working on a series that had a certain historical base, was well represented, very well covered by the media, or had people write about it, or was collected by museums, etc.? So all those reasons power why price points are being established. Client management, to engage with potential bidders, to talk to them, to perhaps take advance bids, etc., or to liaise, etc., for the final auction itself. And of course, there is also the element in an auction house where, following the conclusion of the auction, if some works remain unsold, they could be offered for private sale, but auction houses in any case now also have departments that handle private sales for people who want to sell their works but don't want them to be shown publicly or put into a catalog, etc. Works of art will always require restoration. Climates like India are not very kind. You have heat, humidity, cold. Very often we don't know how to take care of works of art either. So very often you'll find fungus. We've not really cleaned surfaces well. We let works of art kind of deteriorate in quality without even knowing that there's a certain deterioration setting in, because we're seeing them on a regular basis. But works need restoration, and I think it's very important that the longevity of a work of art is extended, because when you own a work of art, you own what is also a part of a national heritage. A work of art that you buy doesn't belong only to you, it belongs to people, it belongs to a country, it belongs to something that's far more than the individual or the self. Therefore, restoration becomes very important. As yet, India has very few professional restorers, but there are courses that are on offer both in India and overseas. People work with mediums, try and understand how an artist has worked, etc. It's a very, very sensitive area, because you could end up ruining a work of art as well. Authentication, becoming increasingly important again in our country, and therefore you need people who will help you authenticate works of art, whether they're based out of galleries or whether they're individuals. Works that were sold 150 years ago, 200 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, nobody really cared. You just bought a work of art and put it on your walls or put it in your vaults and forgot about it. Today, when you want to value the work, you need a kind of history of the work. How did you get it? Where did you get it from? The entire element of provenance that comes in. How do you establish that it is not a fake work, that it is a real work, a genuine work? Therefore, that history becomes very important. Or experts who've studied artists and their styles and are equipped to tell you that, yes, this work is a genuine work by Raza, or we believe it may not be a work by Raza. People who therefore have been studying not only how artists work in a certain period of time, what mediums they were working on, where they were based, but also how they were signing in the 60s or how they were signing in the 70s or 80s. A Hussain work that might come to you signed in Telugu might surprise you, and you'll turn around and say, oh my God, this is not possible. But artists have signed in different ways at different points in time. So therefore, keeping even a history or a record of signatures and comparing them makes all that difference. And then, of course, there is that entire universe of services that works around how works of art are sold, kept, renovated, revitalized, etc. So you have framers, you have lighting experts, exhibition designers, architects among them. Framing has become a huge field today because a work of art will find itself looking very different in the manner that it is framed. You now want to put a work, fragile work, on paper, for example. You want to make sure that it has mount boards and paper support that is archival, so that there's no damage caused to the work of art over an extended period of time. You may choose to put in museum glass, for instance, to ensure that ultraviolet rays don't damage the work of art, but also the way you look at the work of art, there's no glare that spoils your viewing pleasure. You're able to see the depth, etc. So why is canvas, for example, not put behind glass? Because it breathes. So you need that kind of expert advice constantly and a whole support industry that takes care of a work of art that you acquire. Architects, display designers to tell you how a work of art is to be displayed, to make the most of it. Lighting displays to make sure that they're well put out together. There's both an art and a science into displaying works of art. Researchers, writers, you can look at a work of art, you can tell from your gut whether you like it or not. But how many of us in India actually even know how to look at a work of art? How many of us have gone to many galleries growing up? How many of us have visited museums on a constant basis? How many of us can even actually recognize the works of 5, 10, 15, 20 artists by just simply looking at it? We don't. We're not schooled to it. Our eyes are not trained because we haven't been taken by our parents on these visits. Our schools haven't taken us. Our colleges haven't taken us. And therefore, a sense of diffidence has come in. When I don't know something, I'm a little scared, so I won't go into a gallery because I might look like a fool when I go into that space, etc. So you need people to help you understand, and that's where researchers, writers, media, etc. become very, very important because they help defray some of that fear. If I don't understand it, I should be able to go up and ask. I should be able to go and say, I don't like this work of art, or I don't like this artist. And you're free not to like an artist, but it's equally important to understand the context, to learn about something. And I think our acceptance of a work of art will go up the moment we realize why an artist is working in a certain way. That's where researchers help. That's where writers help. It's a tough job. The difference between writers and curators, one works with words, the other works with works of art. One tells you about the work, the other looks at the work of art through a period of history, a sense of what works together. A curation is something where your ideas of how an exhibition is being held together are being brought into a certain place. Are you looking at a group of artists and therefore trying to show something? And therefore, are you going to look at a body of work from just the 60s or the 70s or the 80s? Or is the curator going to say, I'm only looking at paper works, or I'm only looking at canvases, or I'm looking at sculptures? Is there a relationship? Are you trying to establish a relationship between work that was happening in the West and work that was happening in India at that period in time? So a curator is knowledgeable, has a history, art history background, most probably, has worked very intensively and closely with the world of art, but the curator's research is driven by the ultimate exhibition in mind. The universe, as I said, is huge. the kind of people you require. You require designers, we've already said that, along with people who display works of art. Somebody who will write the wall texts and somebody who will create the wall text for you to stick on the walls. So there's an industry, there's entrepreneurship that's available. Caption writers, filmmakers, specialized filmmakers on the universe of art. Script writers, for those who are making those films. Documentary films on artists. We haven't seen very many documentary films. Doordarshan ran a series a very long while ago, which was brilliantly put together by a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker called Bikram Singh. It hasn't gone back to making documentaries on artists thereafter. So therefore, huge opportunities there. Huge opportunities actually for writers to actually advise people on how to look at art and buy art as well. So we're looking at entire areas. Artwork photography is a specialized field. A work on the wall needs to be represented in a book or a catalog or on an invitation and must be a true representation. How you photograph that, how you color correct it, how you print it is very, very difficult. There are specialized printers who work only on art books as opposed to any illustrated book or coffee table book. The universe of private museums. Museums, what do they require? Museologists, somebody with the requisite study degrees, ongoing courses, directors, curators, writers, researchers, educationists, and the entire universe of administration and logistics all over again. India has, of course, a very poor history in terms of private museums. It had a very rich history in terms of government museums, but many of them over a period of time, because of a lack of funds, etc., are finding that they're not really able to do everything that a museum ought to be doing. But efforts like this, we hope, will increase the kind of spaces where people like us who enjoy looking at art, studying art, understanding art, can go visit and share with collections of people. So private museums, like galleries, like other museums, again require that entire universe comes together of people to run the show, people to talk about the works, to put together books, to put together exhibitions, to put together contexts. Just to share, these are images from the Kiranada Museum. That's a work by Subodh Gupta on the left. This is the Piramal Art Foundation, the Piramal Museum of Art in Mumbai. Where do you see art? Other places? Commerce in art, enjoying art, enjoying it without the element of commerce associated with it. Or these and various other models exist. A biennale happens every 2 years, essentially a non-commercial show, unlike an art fair. These are images, of course, of the Kochi Biennale, which has now become very well known in India. And with it, and therefore these are the interesting opportunities that come one's way. What started as the Biennale, which its own universe of somebody actually looking at and interacting with artists around the world to bring in and put into a context, particularly in India, look for spaces, create those opportunities and create a platform and a dialogue. What has happened is that the Biennale has given a huge thrust to tourism in Kerala. People now are flying in from around the world, and the people who are coming in are not necessarily people only associated with the world of art. They are people who travel, who come on a holiday, etc., and say, oh, there's an activity happening there. It's pretty much like going to Goa and saying, oh, there's a music festival on, we'll attend it. There's a Biennale on, we'd go and look at the art. That's a fabulous reason to travel, etc., etc. So suddenly, the universe explodes to far, far more than just being contained even within this very vibrant sector. Again, at the Biennale, I think this was at the first Kochi Biennale. Art fairs, massive, massive. We all go and attend, these huge exhibitions, the India International Art Fair in Delhi, various product fairs that happen, garment fairs that happen, leather fairs that happen, etc., depending areas of professional interest, etc. An art fair, similarly, is a massive space of commerce where galleries come together, artists come together, countries come together, dialogues happen, art is seen, and the opportunities around it are tremendous because you're able to see works by hundreds and thousands of artists in the same space, understand what is happening in different countries, what other galleries are showing. So suddenly your learning grows exponentially if you're able to spend time and organize your time well. Art fairs usually also have seminars that are part of such events. There are new gallery launches, openings by artists, etc., etc. So there's a huge amount that you pack in over a short period of 3, 4, 5 days. And once again, look at the kind of people, manpower, strength in the art world that you will require to pull off something like this. Unlike a whole lot of other things, and I'm not belittling other products, etc., art requires extremely sensitive handling. So the kind of logistics that are called for in something like this are humongous. The environment, again, needs to be slightly more, let's say, evolved for art to be shown the way it needs to be shown, the right kind of lighting, the right atmosphere, the right mood, the right spaces, and everything else that comes with an art fair. Travel, commuting, food, huge amounts of opportunities all over again. I mean, online selling, art funds, someone putting together art funds, for example, insuring works of art, a specialized area again, people who will help you invest in art, storage of art, warehousing, vaults. So, I mean, you can throw out ideas literally by the hundreds. Somebody who will help you create an online platform, somebody who will help you sell art overseas, someone who will help you create talks, someone like Diwan who's helping us over here put this off, co-relationship building with other luxury brands and being a part of those luxury platforms somewhere. Creating a specialized group of people who will offer their services to private individuals to hang art in your homes. Outreach, another very important part of the world of art. Education, reaching out to people, whether the privileged or the underprivileged, reaching out to government, sensitizing people, sensitizing bureaucrats, and of course, reaching out to people with specialized, special abilities. And we were happy to have a group like that. Abhas, our program at DAG, where we bring in our experts to help you understand how to look at a world of art. For someone who's sight impaired, for someone who's blind, to be able to understand the world of an artist must be a very, very magical thing indeed. So that is something that we're able to do, but again, we find that there's a huge opportunity over here. There are schools, there are museums, there are galleries, there's everyone who needs to engage, students who need to be brought into spaces like this, teachers to be sent to schools to train children, or to explain or sensitize children about art. So again, part of DAG's outreach program. And this happens across all our galleries, for instance, and as a part of all our shows, wherever they travel. Writing art books for children. The opportunities that exist for entrepreneurs, creating, tying up with artists, selling serigraphs, setting up museum shops, creating merchandise around artists' works, etc., creating and curating events about them, selling online. In terms of the media itself, both training the media and the media being brought in on the other hand. We need far more media to be actually talking about art. The space for art writing in newspapers and magazines has been shrinking. The space for the lifestyle of artists, on the other hand, may have been increasing, etc. But what we're looking for is people who can actually write about art, convince their editors about the need for more space in journals, etc., to fight for that, to have specialized photographers who will work with them once again, to actually work with design teams in magazines, etc., so that those design teams, when they're looking for opportunities for illustrations, etc., look for works by artists to represent it, no matter what the subject they're talking about. And of course, in terms of the backroom logistics, the non-glamorous part of the art world, shipping, packing, crating, security, etc. Can you imagine moving huge amounts of installations, very large? Contemporary art is creating massive, massive installations. Specialized companies now are based and coming out of Southeast Asia. Korea is a huge example, for instance, where they've created specialized shippers and logistics teams to handle art from around the world. The Netherlands is another country which has these specialized teams to handle very large works, etc. Storage of works, shipping of works, packing of works, which means that teams are actually reporting on the work when they receive it. Before packing it, they may take photographs so that the client cannot say later, oh, there's a crack in the work, there's flaking in the work, there's damage to the work, etc. So it's not simply putting it in bubble wrap, putting it into a crate and shipping it off. There's a huge amount of responsibility that goes with a work of art that may cost a few million rupees or a few $1 million. Constant source that you're looking for. Certainly organizations like ours, we employ people who will research aspects, will research photographs, will look for archival material so that it can be accessed and brought in to be part of our books and publications, etc. Libraries, a huge part again. France has just opened, I think, the world's first only fine art library, and it's apparently the largest library in the world. People who do specialized museum walks take you around the world. I know lots of people who package special visits where you will be taken on off hours, for example, to the Louvre or to the Tate, so that you're not a part of the general public in the public hours. So spaces are open specially for you. Or meetings are set up with artists or with curators, etc., so that sharing becomes a very important part of the way you travel and holiday. So art fairs themselves bring in a lot of very specialized groups, whether from museums or from travel groups that have an interest in art. This is a museum display again a part of KNMA, and those are works by Ghulam Sheikh. Art education. We see a huge opportunity for art teachers. There was a time when a lot of artists were also teachers. That break now means that you have space for far more people with a certain background, a certain sensitivity and knowledge to come in and occupy places in schools and colleges, etc., to write books, to create curricula for educational institutions. Specialized PR firms, as important as education. Law. How does somebody who's putting a check for $400 million on the table know that the work of art that he or she is buying is a real work of art? Who does that assessment? Yes, evaluators come in, etc. But finally, you need the legal profession to safeguard you. When you're putting in that $400 million or $4 million, you need to ensure that the work of art that you're buying is not being replaced by another work of art somewhere, that it doesn't disappear in between. How do you take charge of that work of art somewhere? Who monitors all the other invigilators, the evaluators, the security companies, etc., etc.? So legal firms specialize in art as well. They also specialize in things like copyright, intellectual property rights, etc. So again, arguably, so that all of you know, this work that we see of Hussein, for example, that is behind us, the artist may have sold the work to you, you may have sold it to us, we may have hung it on the wall, but the right to use an image of the work and merchandise it, use it for merchandise or to sell it does not rest with us even though we bought the work itself. So ownership of the work of art does not mean that you own the right to the image as well. Increasingly, therefore, lawyers are helping you buy the right to the image when you buy a work of art as well. So these are all part of a new universe that is developing and evolving and requires a growing network of professionals to support it. Artists themselves, they require a huge amount of assistance. They need people, if they're working with sculptors, etc., someone who helps forge things. They need foundries. They need their assistants to work with them, somebody who manages their inventories, manages their shipping. Many artists work with assistants, whether they're printmakers, sculptors, etc., or they're working on very large installations. They will require a battery of people they can work with. And finally, archiving itself. A work of art may have been purchased by you, but there's an entire archive that supports information behind that work of art. Who was the artist? Where was the work shown? Which exhibition was it shown in? Are there any written documents? Are there any scribbles? Are there any notes to tell you when it was sold, how much it was sold for? Are there sketchbooks with the same work that have been represented, etc., etc.? So that archive actually helps the entire support system understand whether it's evaluators, whether it's researchers, whether it's writers, whether it's buyers, sales teams, etc., to understand and lend greater value to a work of art or to a series of work of art or an artist's studio itself. So that, I think, kind of sums up the massive, 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 massive opportunities that exist for anyone with an interest in art. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions, if any.
Coming back to the point, I personally find something that in the art world today, and when you are talking of millions, you're talking of the artworks in millions of dollars, yes. And here we have a large amount of audience. We still are thinking of hundreds and thousands. Now there is some disconnect. We see in our industry we have the large conglomerates, we have the large international companies, and here we have a very huge, what we call the micro and small. What I see is some kind of analogy process that we have an establishment, we have a huge chamber of innovators, R&D, a large number of the companies, and we have a very minuscule marketing department. It is not possible because these people are there working their workshops, in their studios, churning out the art, but the marketing for them is absolutely minuscule, and only hope I see this is a digital prescription. Instead of going from the pardon, instead of living in the old age of galleries and collectors and auctions, second stage, I think the need, what I say, to give a venue for being in this passion of art for these large amounts. Just to elaborate one more point, was this that when I was traveling, I was using the home, travel in Ontario and I'm visiting a friend's house. His wife happened to be an art collector. And they had built a beautiful home, a lake of art, which was like a film or museum. So I said to them, the house would be different, not by the walls were different, but it would be different. Now, the artwork would have been a religious outcome, but I'm sure the walls would still look beautiful if the work was not having a brand on it. The walls are walls, the artwork is art. That gave me inspiration. When we built our home, I gave the gift to the architect that if we want a home where there should be a place for us, there should be a place for work. It was different. We had our own internal thing. We will not give me the space for them. But anyway, we created a home and I find it very satisfying. That it may not be the best home, but it certainly is different. Then I did recently the small one where a flat which we are making in town. And again the same thing that I had in my mind that the whole, the interior designer had to work with the art. So we have got a flat of about 1,800 in which we have got for 10 art, 10, 12 art. So it looks like that, yeah, but it gives me a different feel. It's a different feel. Coming back to my point now, what I'm trying to drive home is I don't see that kind of a connect which is required by the artwork and the interior designers and the architects.
Okay, I'm going to take it from here because I think it's going on for very long. I totally endorse what you're saying, and I think this is what I was trying to represent here as well, that we need more people to create these platforms, more opportunities, more entrepreneurship. Definitely architects need to be sensitized, designers need to be sensitized, more people. You had the experience of traveling out and looking at, going into museums, etc. Not very many people do that. So a lot of it has to come from inside you, but a whole universe has to be created. And it's not about value of work. When we're talking about value of work, I'm talking about the context of shipping, etc., and therefore what needs to go into developing something that ensures its security or its insurance value, etc. But every work of art, one, is important. Two, every model will be a part of our larger universe. You cannot simply say that art will be sold online, etc., because we also have a history going back 5,000 years of works of art that have been created. Works and values also increase as things get older, etc. People want to touch, feel, see, understand. They will simply not pick up something if it's online without knowing what it is, without the endorsements that are required, without seeing something physically for themselves. But there's room for every kind of technological intervention, and that is going to continue to happen. Online selling is already happening in India, around the world. Online auctions are already happening. Technology will help you move on to your mobile phone, etc. Amateur painters, artists, etc. will definitely sell from these venues. But there are people who need to create these technology platforms. There are more entrepreneurs who need to come in, who need to create these opportunities, etc. And that's where I think that's what I've been talking about, that instead of being a very confined, small segment of our society, the world of art actually allows huge opportunities in careers as well as entrepreneurship.